Wes Anderson is a cinematic icon, a modern-day auteur, and an important filmmaker to credit for a lot of people's interest in the Criterion Collection.
Hi, I'm Jason Schwartzman. I'm Wes Anderson, and we're about to walk through and talk about some music and DVDs and things that we're interested in.
As we rank Wes Anderson's films, it only feels appropriate that I also highlight the Criterion editions along the way. Now, if you're new to the channel and you don't know anything about Criterion Collection, the general gist of it, they are a physical media label that specializes in putting together the best restoration of a film with specially designed packaging and artwork that makes them fun to display on your shelf. And all of Wes Anderson's movies have been given the Criterion treatment, and most recently with this beautiful new box set. However, it's important to note his two most recent films, Asteroid City and The Phoenician Scheme, are not yet available on Criterion. Hopefully it's just a matter of time. Now, Wes Anderson films tend to have an almost storybook feel to them. Their unique camera work, symmetrical framing, meticulous set design, and often pastel color palettes create an experience that oftentimes transcends genre and can be hard to label other than, yeah, that's a Wes Anderson movie. And while I was recently revisiting all of the films in his catalog, it's really fun to see the gradual evolution of his style. As his films progressed, they definitely got more, how do I say it, Wes Anderson-y? As uniquely different as so many of the settings in all of his movies are, it really struck me this time how many of the same core story elements are actually very similar throughout his films. One of those being that a lot of his stories revolve around father and son issues. And two, it seems like there's only two kind of protagonists in his movies. The broken but tough and stubborn, hard-ass, take-no-shit kind of criminal character, or the fast-talking, swindling, con artist, grandmaster plan type character. Both having father issues, of course. And it just seems like his characters are kind of all on the spectrum of that, you know? Anyway, I don't mean that as a negative thing. I just felt that it was a very interesting consistency I picked up across all of his films this time. Because yes, I'm gonna go through all 12 of his films, not just the Criterion ones, but the other two, and I'm going to rank them from my least favorite Wes Anderson film to my most favorite Wes Anderson film. So let's waste no more time and let's get into the Wes Anderson ranking list, baby. And starting at the very bottom, number 12 on this list, my least favorite Wes Anderson movie, The Royal Tenenbaums. Nah, I'm just rage baiting you. I've seen it at least 4 times prior to this video, and for whatever reason, I just could never connect with it. So when I went into making this list and I was rewatching the movies, I was like, I already basically know I've given this movie enough chances, and so I put it at number 12, and then I watched it and that changed. So end of rage bait. You'll have to see what I think of it down the line. Number 12, sadly to report, is Isle of Dogs.
You heard the rumor, right, about these Aboriginal dogs?
No.
Remind me again.
What's the rumor?
They're cannibals.
When I saw it in theaters, I remember really enjoying it. Watching it this time, I'm sad to say, I just didn't fully connect with it. I think it's quite possibly one of the most meditative, kind of alluring films of his, where it's not necessarily wall-to-wall dialogue, which I actually appreciate. Sometimes you kind of need a breather in a Wes Anderson movie. This movie gets a little bit more slow in its pacing, and I'm able to just kind of look at the visuals and enjoy them and take them in, especially being that it is beautiful stop-motion animation work, which it's still just astounding when you think about the process of trying to make a film like this. My biggest issues with it are that Bryan Cranston's character as Chief, I just don't really connect to that well. It feels kind of like a tired retread of a lot of characters I've seen in other Wes Anderson movies, and it also just takes away and distracts from the other really exciting supporting characters. I think Edward Norton and Jeff Goldblum and Bill Murray as the other crew of dogs are so funny, and I really like them on screen, but it never feels like we ever get to really sink into them as characters and get to enjoy the crew as it is. And I just think that that's one of the issues of this movie, is it just hops around too much and it never really gets me in a place where I feel settled. And then once you do kind of settle, it's with Bryan Cranston's character and the boy, and for whatever reason, the performance just feels really flat. The vocal delivery, I think that's my biggest issue with it. So I just kind of don't connect with its main character, I guess. I still like it, though. I still like it. Okay, number 11 on my list is going to piss a lot of people off, I think.
I'll be out back.
I'm going to find a tree to chop down.
Moonrise Kingdom. I think this is one of the first Wes Anderson movies that hits that level of just feeling immaculate as far as its live action filmmaking is concerned. And so every frame of this movie is very careful and put together very well, which is saying the same thing about a lot of other Wes Anderson movies, but I think some of the work that came prior to that with live action, there's some roughness to the edges every once in a while, and it just gets more and more sharpened as we progress, this kind of being the peak and everything that follows kind of matching that, in my opinion. So all that's to say the aesthetic is pleasing, very pleasing. If this is the first Wes Anderson movie you've ever seen, I think that you probably will love it. I think that's the case for whatever your first Wes Anderson movie is in general. But a lot of the things here, when I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, that's a Wes Anderson joke. That's a Wes Anderson-ism. That's a Wes Anderson thing that I expect to see. And the odds and ends to the characters' particulars, it feels very much like it's been done before. Sometimes this kind of flat, monotone delivery, just some actors, some main characters really can pull through another level of humanity through that, and others, for me, just don't. And in this movie, it feels like a lot of people just kind of speaking in robotic, very monotone, straightforward ways. I think the film is filled with all of the quirkiness and charm you expect to see in a Wes Anderson movie, but that's part of the issue for me. It's just, okay, I feel like that's the Wes Anderson joke I'm expecting here, but ultimately it feels a little hollow for me. So I'm sorry for all you Moonrise Kingdom lovers. It's number 11 on my list. Number 10 on this list, not in the Criterion Collection yet, at least. Maybe it will never. I don't know. The Phoenician Scheme, starring Benicio del Toro.
I don't live anywhere. I'm not a citizen at all. I don't need my human rights.
It just came out in 2025. I actually have a movie review posted on this channel from when I saw it for the first time, so I'll let you go there if you want a little bit longer thoughts on it, or check out my Letterboxd. But I really enjoyed The Phoenician Scheme. I know it's ranking number 10 at this list, but that's just how good Wes Anderson movies are. One of the things I really loved about Phoenician Scheme was it felt a little bit more narrow in its scope as far as the characters it was tackling. The previous batch of Wes Anderson films before Phoenician Scheme are so chock full of characters and celebrity cameos, and it's just got a lot. And sometimes it can be hard to find your bearings when there's that many cast members to share the screen with. I really appreciated that this kind of narrowed down very quickly into a core 3, and I felt like it was a lot more focused in that way. A bit of a road trip movie, which is also fun because Wes Anderson is in this place where he's just fabricating all of these new cultures and societies and countries and cities. And so when you get a road trip movie out of him, you just get to see all of these ideas from the Wes Anderson headcanon. I do feel that its biggest weakness was in its final act, though. The final confrontation and climax of the action wasn't that satisfying necessarily, but I did feel like the heartfelt aspect of it was very satisfying. So it lands at number 10 on my list, and this is where I would say the list just gets thoroughly more difficult for me. Number 9.
You told your friend Bernice I'm some kind of jet pilot?
What was I supposed to say? They stuck you in an insane asylum?
It wasn't an insane asylum, Grace. I explained to you back then that it was for exhaustion.
Bottle Rocket, I guess, was my first Wes Anderson movie. That kind of breaks my whole theory that the first Wes Anderson movie you see is your favorite. But this was my first Wes Anderson movie. A friend, David Gatenby, borrowed me the DVD. I loved it. I also saw that his DVD was part of the Criterion Collection. I was like, what's that? He was like, dude, film. He kind of got me into this whole thing. So shout out, David. Owen Wilson is a petty crime artist, but he thinks he's just so much bigger than he is. But they're robbing like bookies for like $100, and they go and spend all their money on fireworks and live in a motel for a week. Owen Wilson as the initial archetype of the fast-talking grand master plan character. He's got his 75-year plan laid out for him. And I just love how he believes in himself so much, but he like needs the fuel of his team. He needs like Luke Wilson's character to believe in him. And Luke Wilson as Anthony is such a lovable character because he's just so chill and nonchalant, but he's trying to like get his life together. He's trying to figure out the purpose of his life. You know, he just got out of a mental hospital that he put himself in. It holds up. It's such a fun indie comedy. I mean, being that it's the very first Wes Anderson film, it is, of course, the least of the Wes Anderson isms that he's ever had in his movies. So I would say it feels just more like you're watching an indie comedy. The reason it falls a little lower on my list, I think its biggest issues are pacing. I think this movie has a lot of momentum. It's going through about the first 25 minutes, and then they get to this motel, and it just really stalls. It kind of grinds to a halt. I don't think that it's not funny or endearing during those moments. I just think from a plot perspective, the momentum just really stalls out. Then its final act and its final con with Applejack and the whole crew is so funny. Just how everything just falls apart on them. It's just chaos. And yeah, it's a fun petty crime movie. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Bottle Rocket is super fun. And yeah, actually, I think that was my very first Criterion Collection purchase. Moving along to number 8 on this list.
She's been murdered. And you think I did it.
Yeah, this one's painful too. I think a lot of people would disagree with me on this. The Grand Budapest Hotel. This is a Criterion slipcover edition. Whoops, there that goes. And of course, yeah, I don't know why I'm trying to show you this while I talk about it. There's no way I'm going to be able to multitask that. Got a bunch of books and shit. Just buy it if you want it. That's my review of the physical copy. The Grand Budapest Hotel feels like one of the more memorable Wes Anderson movies in the history of Wes Anderson movies. I feel like it's only grown more appreciation with time. I feel like when it did come out, it kind of got recognized and touted as being one of his best. And that's exactly how I felt about it. I've seen this movie at least 4 times as well, which for me is a lot, by the way. If you're like, oh, 4 times isn't that much. I don't really rewatch movies a whole lot. So you're probably thinking, why the fuck do you collect physical media if you don't rewatch movies that much? Just, we all do our own things for our own reasons, okay? I thoroughly enjoy this movie. I love the world building. I love the introduction of these fake countries that Wes Anderson's coming up with. I found him to have really pushed the boundary of visual storytelling to another level by the use of different aspect ratios, cameras, and visual style between the different periods in time, which this movie kind of goes through like 3 or 4 generations to tell its story at the beginning, and then kind of does that at its outro as well. And so I like this idea that the aspect ratio kind of helps signify where you're at in the timeline. And what I was talking about earlier, where you have a lot of characters that have to deliver this very straight to the point, sharp as an arrow dialogue from Wes Anderson, it can come across very low energy or very monotone. And I feel like only certain performers or certain roles really lend to elevating that. And this is an example where I feel like Ralph Fiennes just transcends and kind of breaks through, maximizing Wes Anderson's style with performance that is both so vulnerable and yet feisty and fiery, and his emotional support lobby boy. I mean, I love the duo of those two. It's so great. Willem Dafoe is also a hilarious villain, and these sets are phenomenal. And there's great action in this one. I also love the work of miniatures and miniature action scenes in this one in particular. My biggest knock to this one is also pacing. The middle of the film kind of stalls out for me. It loses momentum when Ralph Fiennes goes to prison, and it kind of struggles to get back there for me. It rebounds nicely, though, and it's still a great movie. There you go. Number 7 on this list. The biggest surprise to me while making this list, honestly, because before I rewatched it, I would have said this was my least favorite Wes Anderson film, and that was The French Dispatch of the Liberty, Kansas Evening Sun.
The cats, which colonized its slanty rooftops. The Anguillette, which colonized its shallow drainage canals.
I rewatched this movie just earlier this month when I got the Criterion 4K, which some of my favorite packaging, by the way, which, yeah, I made a little short. You can go watch that. I open it up. The French Dispatch, to me, on initial watch, I just don't think I could possibly have soaked in the detail that this film has. Wes Anderson films are already so packed full of detail, and they move quickly. And a film like this, having 3 different main stories that are chronicled through kind of an outside set of characters that run this newspaper, it is a lot of stuff to keep track of. And if you don't keep up, you can get kind of lost in it. Or really the bigger struggle is that because it's kind of 3 main stories, that can be a momentum reset every time. And naturally, it can be hard when it comes to pacing for a three-piece movie. You just got to be in the right mindset. That's all it is. But by setting this film as the kind of end of a newspaper that was ran by Bill Murray's character, and it's all of the columnists kind of reflecting on the different experiences over the years writing for this newspaper, by having that be the setting and the general story structure, it allows us to explore this town of Ennui in such an enriched way through so many different perspectives and different parts of the city. It's one of the most fully crafted environments Wes Anderson has ever done. I was just eating it all up this time. Like, the opening 10 minutes alone is just so jam-packed as we're just following Owen Wilson bike riding through and talking about these different stories and giving us the ins and the outs, and we get the narration and everything. It's just so much. You should almost watch that sequence twice before moving on. There's so much to love here. And then Benicio's character, very similar character to who he plays in Phoenician Scheme, but he's that tough guy, the grumbling, like growling dog. Oh my God, I love him so much in this. His first story, he's this criminal who's a painter, turns out to be this fantastic artist, right? And then Adrian Brody wants to buy his work and sell it, and basically wants to pimp out his artwork, which does get to the themes of this film, which I can kind of touch on later here. Benicio's character, just so fun to watch. He's so calm and relaxed and cool-headed, seemingly, but he's so hot-wired that he just commits the most insane crimes. He also plays with use of format in this film too, being that he kind of switches between black and white to color at different times, which I kind of theorized might have something to do with the memory of the narrator, because each story is being narrated by a columnist reflecting on something. So black and white is either resembling shaky memory on a moment, unclear memory, or potentially falsities in their story. So that was my own interpretation of it. And I also really loved the running theme of each story being about the purpose of art and the purpose of storytelling. And at the end, I think it really comes together thematically, which I honestly didn't pick up on at all the first time I watched it. So Bill Murray, as the kind of head of the French Dispatch, was essentially this guy who curated and helped navigate and inspire different storytellers and saw past their flaws and helped provide a place for them to kind of be themselves and ultimately live by this mantra of these are my people, and he'll stand by them no matter what. And in a way, it felt like Wes Anderson kind of saying about all of his characters in this film and his characters in general, like, these are my people and I'll stand by them. Because whether it appeals to a wide audience or not, these are his people. Anyway, God, I really loved The French Dispatch. It can just be overwhelming at times.
Wouldn't it sound great if you could hear a train going by off in the distance right now?
Not really. Probably be annoying.
Number 6, though, is the Darjeeling Limited. This film came out in 2007. It's kind of like him taking a step back. I don't know, maybe 2007 was kind of just like peak indie era. You had like Little Miss Sunshine in 2005, and just like the way indie films felt, they were transcending from just being at festivals into having wider releases. It was kind of like how Mumford & Sons became indie music, right? It became associated with a sound or a style. So the idea of indie meant you were going to go see a Little Miss Sunshine. At least that's the way I look at it during this era. And I feel like Darjeeling Limited is kind of like Wes Anderson's indie movie. It's like the genre of indie, if it were a genre in that sense. So I think this movie gets some flack for that. Like, maybe it's trying to appeal too much to like an audience, a general audience. I don't know. But personally, I really love this film. It's 3 brothers who haven't seen each other in forever and have just like mounds and mounds of trauma from their childhood. But I just love spending this whole journey with these 3 characters. You know, Adrian Brody, Jason Schwartzman, and Owen Wilson just have such great chemistry. I think there's just some really effective storytelling here about family, which is articulated in a really nuanced and efficient way. Our introduction to these 3 brothers, in the first 20-25 minutes, a lot of the character traits they have are viewed as kind of annoyances to each other. Like, they all get on each other's nerves a little bit, and as a viewer, you can kind of see that and find relatability there. You're like, oh yeah, like I love my family, but they do this weird thing. There's this weird quirk, and like, oh, that really annoys me. And by the end of the journey, you know, there's this kind of big centerpiece in the film that it gets quiet, there's some drama that happens, and our characters kind of go through this really impactful moment. And by the end of it, you start to see those traits and those little quirks that each character have pop up again, but instead of being annoyed by them, you're like, my family's back. And this movie just communicates that so well. However, its final scenes are a little overt, with them quite literally dropping their father's baggage to catch a train, being the obvious metaphor that it is. But hey, I really enjoyed this movie.
Excuse me, Mr. Bloom. Nice talking to you.
You're on the team?
I'm an alternate. Hey, dude. Good to see you again.
Number 5 on this list is Rushmore, 1998. This is the movie that I think really established Wes Anderson in Hollywood and got him a little bit more notoriety. You know, it's his first time working with Bill Murray, and, you know, Bill Murray ends up in just about the rest of his films from here on out. And one of the funnest parts for Bill Murray in any of his films, it's a co-lead role, and he's really great in it. Jason Schwartzman, it's his first role. He plays Max, who's this very overly motivated and ambitious kid who goes to a private school. He is so thrilled to be at Rushmore that he feels his extracurriculars to the max. Like, all he does is lead different clubs, direct drama plays, do all of the extracurriculars to the point where his grades are failing and he's barely getting through class. But he's such a good swindler and fast talker that he meets specifically with the principal multiple times and can kind of talk his way into getting that extra chance until he can't anymore. And then he's rejected and has to go to regular public school. And this movie might be a little bit more raw around some of its edges, but you can really see Wes Anderson fine-tuning his timing, because that's, I think, what makes some of his comedy so effective here and in general. All right, number 4 on my list.
Are you or aren't you?
What? Dying? Yeah.
The aforementioned The Royal Tenenbaums. I know this is many people's number 1 or number 2, probably. You heard my story at the beginning, but it really worked for me finally. And I was ready to dislike it. I kind of wanted the controversy for my video to say this was at number 12. But the movie grabbed a hold of me. And maybe that was the difference. Every other time I tried watching it, I said, I'll get it this time. This will be the moment. And this time I was like, nah, I'm going to look for its flaws and I'm going to tell everybody why The Royal Tenenbaums is number 12. That's not the case at all. I think it's an absolutely wonderful film. This is the first time we really get to see the camera work and the budget for Wes Anderson's film go up to the point where he could do a lot of the things he clearly wanted to do, and we see in his later movies. I'll read through some of the notes I had as I was watching the beginning of this film. I said, being that this is an early example of Wes Anderson's ultra-refined, clean frame feel, it does at times feel the cinematography is claustrophobic, which I don't completely disagree with. The movements and the stagnant shot composition isn't as refined as it is in later films and can be stifling. I was feeling that through the first 20 minutes, but then it disappeared on me. At some point I got swept up. But yeah, the actual story of it being that Royal has just been such a narcissistic, self-involved father his whole life that he's completely neglected his kids, and they've turned out into be these very eccentric and strange personalities, all 3 of them different and with varying degrees of trauma. The father, after being sued by his own son multiple times and after having run completely out of money, he's getting kicked out of his hotel, and so he has nowhere to turn but back to his family. Well, his family doesn't accept him, so he lies about having cancer, and then the family all kind of comes home and they're forced to kind of deal with each other and their problems. The fact that he lies about having cancer and then uses all of his goons to kind of like help double as doctors, like the lengths he goes to, it's very funny. But separately from that, I think that the real heart of this film is Luke Wilson's character, who's a very successful tennis player who's completely fallen off and is just in the deepest and darkest places of his life. And a big part of that being that he's in love with his own adopted sister, played by Gwyneth Paltrow. You know, the whole scene where Luke Wilson's shaving his beard and his hair and attempts suicide. It's just a really powerful and intense scene that I think builds a lot of emotion and for the character. And yeah, he's just very effective in this movie. Yeah, so it goes to some dark places, but there's some great stuff in here. I mean, there's a cemetery sequence early on. It's such a great scene. It really is as good as people say it is, and I'm sad that I never realized that before. My one criticism of it, though, is I don't quite think Ben Stiller works that well in it. he just doesn't feel like he fits in into the role very easily. But the movie and the story does kind of leave him in the dust a little bit as far as character development, and he kind of gets cast aside a little bit. Anyway, 2 more. Oh no, 3 more. 2 more physical ones. Holy shit, yeah, number 3 on my list, probably going to be the biggest surprise here because that's Asteroid City. 2023, I believe, was the year. This movie did something I hadn't seen in a Wes Anderson movie before, and it really hit this really deep core level. Early on, I didn't know, I was kind of getting my feelers. There's about 30, 40 minutes, like not sure exactly where the movie was going. And then it hits this point, the movie kind of like snaps out of itself, and it felt like the heart and the truth of this story was something that you had to kind of unpack. Like the movie itself is about the relationship between a director, a writer, an actor, and their art. And it's not necessarily being explicit about that. And I thought that was really interesting. It kind of reminded me of like 8.5, the Federico Fellini film. Like, holy fuck, you have this moment where you're like, this movie isn't about what I think it's about. It's about something else. It was almost like Wes Anderson was writing Asteroid City, didn't know where to go with it, and then decided to make the movie about not knowing where to go with your movie. So instead, it becomes this big psychoanalysis about storytelling and your relationship with your own art and your ability to communicate through character. So for that, I really, really appreciate this movie and I really love it. Then you get back into the main story and then everything just makes so much sense and it starts to work. Then suddenly it's all fun. And I love the environments. I love Asteroid City, the design of it, the characters, this kind of like 1960s Tomorrowland feel, bringing stop motion animation back with the alien is super fun. Asteroid City was a real surprise and a delightful film for me. Oh, but I do have a criticism of this film that I think is important, and I think it's important for kind of a lot of Wes Anderson films in general. At a certain point, it feels like the adverts for a new Wes Anderson film is just a long list of actors and names that you're familiar with. And you get all excited because sometimes you see a name on there like Jeff Goldblum and you get stoked that you're going to see Jeff Goldblum in the movie. And then he's in it for a maximum of 1 minute. And you're kind of like, what the fuck? Instead of just appreciating that I get to see Steve Carell execute a really fun like bit character or side character for 5 or 6 minutes. Whenever you go see a new Wes Anderson movie, like forget the cast list. If they're not front and center on the poster, then just like don't expect that person to be a big part in the movie. And then you'll just be happily surprised with who does show up and what their character is. And it's not so much a criticism of the filmmaking because really it's a criticism of the studio. It's how they have to market the film for it to make money. Maybe people will go see it. Number 2 on this list, a movie that I thought would be closer to the middle or lower part of this list. A movie that, crazy in my head, I thought I liked Isle of Dogs better than this movie. Rewatching them, they're on like polar ends of the spectrum for me now. Fantastic Mr. Fox. Like, how did I forget that this movie is basically perfect?
Are you scared of wolves?
Scared? No. I have a phobia of them.
Well, I have a thing about thunder.
Why? That's stupid.
I don't like needles myself.
Where'd you come from again? How'd you get in the sidecar? I feel like I'm losing my mind.
Isle of Dogs in some ways felt kind of bland and lifeless in its delivery through the Wes Anderson kind of tone of voice, right? This movie feels the complete opposite. George Clooney is excellent at delivering the Wes Anderson dialogue and bringing so much energy and character to Fantastic Mr. Fox. And I just love him so much as a lead. And then just him being a rascally bandit, the colors. I mean, this is a great fall movie. In fact, I'm really loving that I chose to watch all these movies in the fall because they definitely fit the vibe of November for me. Sweater weather kind of movies. Bill Murray's Beaver character and the kind of leasing office as they're cussing each other out. The whole use of just saying like cuss instead of a curse word is a really funny gag that's throughout the film. This movie feels like it does have less Wes Anderson isms than other films do. However, it's still very much a movie about father and son issues, and of course a bandit con artist struggling with his own insecurities, kind of lead character, but with a lot of blind confidence and arrogance. Basically, most of Wes Anderson's characters are just like Mr. Fox here. It's one of the fastest, funnest Wes Anderson films, and if you haven't seen Fantastic Mr. Fox, You should watch it. Also, it should be noted that Noah Baumbach was the co-writer here. So I didn't mention that earlier, but he also helped co-write a couple of other ones. I was about to say Royal Tenenbaums, but I think that was Sofia Coppola now. I don't know. No, Owen Wilson did Royal Tenenbaums. Sofia Coppola did which fuck movie? Darjeeling. But I think Noah Baumbach did that too. I should probably fact check myself before I start just randomly spitting out facts. If I left this in the video, I looked it up and I guess I was right. Number 1 on my list is The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
Nah, either they can't hear us or they don't understand.
Son of a bitch, I'm sick of these dolphins.
The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou is my favorite Wes Anderson movie as of right now and has been for a while. It follows a marine biologist as he premieres his latest film in which his longtime partner Esteban dies in a jaguar shark attack. It feels like he's premiering it at Cannes. It's just all these really nicely dressed tuxedos, and the movie is just shoddy. It's just funny to imagine that audience having to sit through Steve Zissou's movies because they're just like, they're so amateur. They're so filled with things that feel like falsities. Like, there's no way. Is Esteban really dead? Did they really encounter a jaguar shark? Because none of it's on camera. And so I love that it sets the precipice early on that you got to kind of question whether or not Bill Murray is telling the truth. Is Steve Zissou really chasing a jaguar shark, or is he just desperately chasing fame and what he once had as he's kind of hitting this crisis in life, feeling like he's lost it? Well, he meets his long-lost son, played by Owen Wilson, and now he gets to kind of relive his glory days through his son, who's so excited to be a part of Zissou's world. So the story itself is another father-son story, but this has probably my favorite Bill Murray performance in any Bill Murray film. I just love how over-dramatic but yet sensitive he is at the same time, arguing with his wife, but yet like saying cruel things or harsh things, and you can see how it's affected their relationship and how he's damaging his own relationships. But then he can't take the slightest of criticism back. He's just so sensitive. And basically, he's just the most difficult person to be in a room with. And Bill Murray's just so good at playing that type of character and making him charming and lovable at the same time. Bill Murray also says in this, "I hated fathers and I never wanted to be one," which kind of almost just feels like the grand statement of Wes Anderson's work. Willem Dafoe as Klaus, who is someone who's looked at Zissou as a father figure and wants that validation from him, is one of my favorite Willem Dafoe characters, which then brings me to their costuming. The little red caps they all wear and the little blue jumpsuits is just so comical to me. Yeah, the dolphins. I was just remembering the dolphins. They're supposed to be these really smart dolphins that can like do work for them, go scouting, but they end up just like goofing off and never focus, and they have these cameras attached to them. And there's just this running gag with him. And by the end, Bill Murray's like, God, I hate these dolphins. And it just gets me so bad every time. The common Wes Anderson isms, the style of photography, the weird outfits, the made up species, the miniature work for like the boat and everything, all of that stuff feels more specifically tied to Zissou's world. And what I mean is in this movie, you get a lot of outside world stuff that feels very grounded, like the premiere at the beginning of this movie. It feels like a real place in the real world. And so you see Zissou navigating real world environments. And then when he brings Owen Wilson into the fold and he joins the Team Zissou crew, and you get to the boat and you go out on the sea and you see the weird species, suddenly it's like, you're seeing it through Zissou's eyes, and almost as if you're a kid looking up to him. It's like all of the weirdness is there. And so it only furthers this question of like, is Zissou just a little bit nuts, or is he just got that aspect of it figured out? Like he's so nonchalant about it all. And I love that feeling of stepping into like Zissou's world, and that's where all the Wes Anderson isms are. And so that contrast between the two, it's the only movie I can really think of in his filmography that uses his style as a point of contrast within its own film. That really stood out to me this time, and I think that is why it's more humorous to me. And then the final sequence in the submarine, which, spoiler alerts if you haven't seen it, they encounter the jaguar shark, and you get this epic swell of music from Portishead, orchestral music. You see the jaguar shark, and everyone just goes silent. And One of my favorite moments in the movie happens. Klaus asks, what are we going to do now? And Bill Murray says, I don't know. And he's like, do you still want to blow it up with dynamite? And he says, no. And we forgot the dynamite anyway. It's like he kind of needs an excuse instead of saying his real feelings. But you cut over to Anjelica Huston, who plays his wife. They've had a struggling relationship throughout. And she gives this little smirk. Like she recognizes the growth in Zissou in this moment and the catharsis that he's finally getting to go through. And because she loves him, it moves her. And then seeing him let go of his anger, it's so powerful how it's portrayed. Because he's such a hard-headed guy who's just always trying to fast-talk his way out of scenarios with his wife. And she's now leaving him and going back to her ex. And to have this moment where he finally kind of releases and he's overcome his like desire for revenge and ask, I wonder if he remembers me. Like as if the shark would remember him. It makes me want to tear up now. It's such a beautiful like capsule for the film. Like all Zissou wants is to be remembered. And he wants to have purpose and he wants to have meaning. And I think we can all relate to that. So. But enough said about that. I've talked about the movie other times on the channel. I didn't even mention the David Bowie music, but I'm a huge David Bowie fan, so that's always a plus. That is my list of Wes Anderson movies in order of my favorites. Like that. Minus the two that I don't know. What do you guys think of this list? Did it surprise you? Are there movies that you're just kind of like, what the hell were you thinking? I'm sure there is. Follow me on Letterboxd to see what I think of every movie that I watch. But also subscribe to the channel. And I love you. And we'll talk to you in the next video.
In 12 years, he'll be 11 and a half.
That was my favorite age.